Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Vail School District Governing Board's meeting on November 15th, 2022. And we're going to start at 7:06. And would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of minutes, November 1, 2022. Consideration of approving the minutes from the regular governing board meeting on November 1st, 2022 as presented. Is there a motion to approve?
So,
Miss
Tippett.
What did they call- Never mind.
We've all
Miss-
wanted to call her that.
Miss Tippett moves and Mr. King seconds. I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is staff, student, and community recognitions. Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Anderson, members of the board. We have a number of staff, student, community recognitions. I'll start with Mr. Dean Norris, followed by Mr. Jeff Parks.
good evening, President Anderson, Superintendent Cruz, and members of the board. I'd like to start off by recognizing our student council, along with our staff advisors, Ali Figueroa and Shelby Jones, for hosting a successful fall dance and snack bar the Friday before Halloween. I've forgotten the date now. Students had a great time, and we had the greatest number of students attend a school dance in a long time because of some other things that have been going on the past couple of years. Possibly even ever is what I was told in the history of Rincon Vista. I also want to thank the RVMS staff members who volunteered their time to chaperone the dance, and those teachers include, or staff members were Kellen Beckler, Amy Haroon, Mary Catherine Scruggs, Suzanne Logsden, Jared Hughes, Carrie Castell, Wendy Matthews, Megan Simonson, Jerlene Franco, Liz Shaw, Megan Lewis, Christina Kinney, Jennifer Neal, and Dane Wirtz. I'd like to recognize our entire front office staff, which includes Isabel Giroux, Cindy Kuhneman, Brittany Herzberg, Amy Muzinski, and Nicole Collins for their efforts in having parents complete and submit the federal impact aid forms. I'm proud to report that we had 98% of our surveys returned, and we were only missing 12 out of 700 students, which is absolutely fantastic. I want to recognize our NJHS students and our staff sponsors, Brianna Fonseca and Megan Simonson, for organizing a successful Make a Difference Day on October 22nd. We had over 80 volunteers on campus working together on projects across our school that included sanding and staining science tables, cleaning out sports storage, cleaning courtyards, trimming bushes and trees, and cleaning and working on the nature trail. In fact, one of our projects started about 30 minutes before we were supposed to end. It went about 30 to 45 minutes past our end time. Students, community members, staff members stayed till the project was done, and that was really impressive. I also like to recognize our attendance clerk, Cindy Kuhneman, for supporting our PTO-sponsored fundraiser by going above and beyond to coordinate daily announcements and student prizes. And if I'm going to be real honest with you, Cindy Kuhneman does more than that on a daily basis. When you come to Rincon Vista, she's like a traffic control keeper. She sits in the front, she answers phones, she controls when we have good guests, students. It's amazing to sit back and watch her work, and with the grace and customer service that she provides to our community. Last but not least, I want to recognize President Anderson and Mr. Aiken for your service on the board. I think this will be the last board meeting I attend and give recognitions. And so I just wanted to recognize the two of you. I've had the pleasure to be an administrator while you have been serving on the board. You guys have shown me what it's like to navigate difficult times. You have both had said things to you, have had things said to you and about you that no volunteer should. And the grace and the just composure that you showed, I've watched and witnessed and appreciated. Not only have I enjoyed your support as an administrator, but also as a parent. President Anderson, your son at Cienega playing soccer, being part of student council assemblies and activities. I have a lot of great memories of all those things. And then Mr. Aiken, your daughter at Rincon Vista, and what she did for our school during those tough times and just the positive spirit she brought, I'm very appreciative of. So thank you for everything you guys have done during your tenure here, and I wish you the best in what you guys do next. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. Mr. Parks, follow that.
Ditto.
10 points for shortest speech ever.
President Anderson, Mr. Cruz, members of the board, I'd like to actually, it's kind of funny because a lot of his themes are the same things that I have, but we'll have different people, I hope. I'd like to recognize first off Sally Moore, as she was one of the 9 finalists for the U of A High School Amazing Teacher of the Year. Sally does an incredible job with that senior exit project with her senior classes, her dual credit. She's the English ITL, she's the National Honor Society rep, Society Club advisor. She just does so many things, and I'm glad that she got recognized amongst her peers, and I'm hoping with a little bit of bias that she wins, but we'll see how it goes. I'd also like to recognize Jackie Wolf for her tireless work coordinating the Halloween Fest at Andrada on Saturday, actually Saturday, the weekend before Halloween, not Friday. We had about 1,000 people in attendance there throughout the day. It was amazing, and I know a few of you guys were there, and it was just incredible. The Halloween, the haunted house, and we partnered with Pantano this year, and we did a haunted hayride. So I'd like to thank Pantano High School and Isaac Walco as well for partnering with us. It was really fun, and we had a lot of good times, and the haunted house was scary. But I didn't go in. My wife went in. I was like, and she doesn't get scared. So I was like, yeah, you got scared. I think I'm going to pass. I'll just watch the end and make sure everybody's okay. I'd also like to recognize Rod Carrier and Brian Frizzell for Great Vale Cross Country Championship. We had it at Andrada this year. Last year it was at Micah Mountain. Also like to thank the volunteers that made it happen, that helped out, specifically Bobcat TV helped out. Jason Miller, I know he was sick that day, but also Steve Taggart was there. And I also like to recognize Andrada High School senior Sam Lariva. We affectionately know him as Greeny, and he was our first ever individual state qualifier from Andrada High School. And so he competed this last Saturday, and he placed in the top 100, which was great for him. And we're really excited, and a lot of spirit for him to be able to recognize that in Andrada. Also like to recognize Rob Davis and Preston Jones and the over 60 volunteers at the Make a Difference Day at Andrada. We had a lot of people there. I've heard that at the high school level, it's hard to get a lot of people to volunteer at the Make a Difference Day, but we had 60 people. We did so much. There was one person out there with a blowtorch, and I probably don't even know this, but they were burning the goat head weeds and stuff like that off of volleyball courts so we could get rid of it. And then they also actually donated rock and sand to be spread too from the church that was them. So that was great for those guys. I'd also like to recognize Jerry Wood, Ron Haymore, and Vale's facility and maintenance crew for doing a ton of work at Andrada, specifically some of the workers, John Coons, Oscar Coronado, Bobby Miles, and Dakota Willems. They've done an incredible job, and they're always very responsive and able to come out there and fix our grounds, and not only fix it, but update with our new various athletic facilities that they've been helping out with. And then finally, I'd like to recognize Debbie Peck, Kathy Ochoa, Tasha Heyman, and Stephanie Lopez Carpenter for their tireless work on coordinating the federal impact aid surveys. We weren't quite as high as Rincon Vista, but we did well for us, and we were pretty proud of that. And again, Mrs. Anderson, Mr. Aiken, I'd like to thank you for your service. I'm not going to go into great detail like Mr. Norris because I can't top that, but I just am very thankful to get to know you this year, and Mrs. Anderson before, my previous life here before, but it's been a pleasure working with you guys, and I'm thankful to be a part of your guys' work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. Mrs. Penn.
Good evening, President Anderson, Mr. Cruz, members of the board. I want to recognize 3 groups that all have something in common. They're the literature review committees that are currently in place. And these teams have been working really hard to review and come to consensus and provide recommendations either to the board that will be coming or to the site councils in the case of the middle school literature committee. I'm going to read the names, even though it's quite a few, because I want just to be able to see the volume of people who are involved in this and to know that these people are reading the books through and dedicating time beyond their workday to make sure that that happens. Our literature review committee members, Amanda Galvin, Marina Stur, Kara Evans, Margaret Stewart, Joe Isaac, Tara Finn, Lainey Kitzmiller, Christina Laboran, Emily Winters, Courtney Young, Megan Simpson, Mary Kay Scruggs, DJ Harding, Dennis Barger, Megan Lottie, and Nancy Lang. Our literature working group team members, they're the ones who are working through the books that have already been approved by the governing board to determine best ways to communicate with parents about the content. This is James Sy, Madison Kaser, Matt Donaldson, Sally Moore, Connie Coles, Rod Carrier, Chris Salvaggio, Sarah Ellis, Kim Middleton, Rachel Mullins, Brandy DeLima, Amanda Dunn, Dennis Barger, W.T. Jeffries, David Shingler, and Brittany Matsushino. And finally, our high school literature committee, they have been working to bring recommendations that will be coming to you in the near future of books that have not yet been before you. This committee is James Sy, Abigail Alden, Matt Donaldson, Nancy Weber-Graff, Jordan Bernal, Sharon Nicolery, Rod Carrier, Sarah Ellis, Hallie Thompson, Stephanie Magnuson, Brandy DeLima, Dennis Barger, David Shingler, Beth Shimpe, and Brittany Matsushino. And although I will be seeing you at our next governing board meeting, whenever that might be, and although I cannot top what Dean had to say, I would also like to take a moment just to recognize and to thank you both, Ms. Anderson, Mr. Aiken. It has been an absolute honor and privilege to work with you for these years. You have made coming to these meetings, presenting ideas, solving problems, and serving this community such a joy. I will miss you very deeply. And I care about you and love you both so much. Thank you for your impact on this community and your service to us all.
Thank you all. We need to make sure we get that next board meeting scheduled so we can continue that next time.
Like some Kleenex.
We have several other district-wide recognitions I'd like to call note to. We are at the tail end of the fall sports and performing arts seasons, and so there's been a number of programs and students that just want to make sure we highlight as well. The Cienega High School Classy Cats Jazz and Show Choir auditioned for the All-State Jazz and All-State Show Choirs, and two members of that program, Ivan Medina and Corin Messina, were chosen for All-State Jazz and Show Choirs respectively. They're the only students from the Tucson area and Southern Arizona region to make this group. There's only 36 singers statewide in the jazz and 50 in the show choir. So they'll be representing not only Cienega, but really the entire southwest region of the state. Cienega High School football, we're also the 5A Southern Region champs. Their girls volleyball program were regional champs, and their boys golf were Division II, Section 2 champs. And their cross-country team placed third in the state, the highest it's placed in the school's history. And Cienega is the only program that has a swimming team, and one student, Miles Simic, placed third in the $500 free at state as well. Yeah. Micah Mountain is just getting rolling with their sports programs, and both their football and volleyball teams finished at the top of their respective regions. They had their cross-country team finished 8th in the state. And then, as Mr. Parks mentioned, Andrada, which was originally built with no athletic facilities, had its first state sole as an Andrada, with Andrada across his chest, runner in the state cross-country meet. So congratulations to Greenie Samuel Lariva for doing that. Empire High School, for the second year in a row, their theater program is headed to state for their one-act play. They're only one of 3 schools statewide to qualify 2 years in a row. it's a great honor for them and a testament to the quality of that program. Our Vail Inclusive Preschool, specifically the one at Micah Mountain High School, received a 4-star rating by the First Things First Quality Counts rating. When just 2 years ago, they were a 2-star rating, and one of the reasons that the ratings are difficult for our VIP program is trying to match the components of what are necessary for students with developmental delays is not always a great match for what the First Things First Quality Counts programs look for. But with time in that program and the ability to make those things go, we're doing that both really high quality programming for all kids, and they were only 0.25 away from earning a 5-star rating. So really good stuff for them. At Sycamore, Janet Roby, their art teacher, received the Arizona Bowl Outstanding Teacher Award, which comes with $1,000 for her classroom and field recognition during the halftime of the Arizona Bowl game, which I think is New Year's Eve. Already mentioned Andrada Polytechnic, so move on from that. Also, I think we mentioned this last time, but just want to loop back to it because the event happened. We had our Jill Wells, who is our family resource coordinator, helped coordinate and works with our students who qualify, who are homeless. So they're part of the McKinney Vento program, organized a group of people to do an event at Walmart. So Walmart was a participant where the students who qualified were able to have $150 in gift cards at Walmart to spend on clothing purchases that they wanted. This was also, we had a couple of community groups that also joined them to help smooth out some of those. So if they came in with $160, they didn't have to return an item. So it's just great stuff. A number of other staff helped with that as well, including Cindy King, who has no affiliation with any of those and is our lead accountant here. So it's just it was a great community partnership and support of young people in our community who are truly most in need. So I want to thank Jill Wells in particular, and also Cindy King, who helped out of the kindness of her heart. That's all I have for staff, student, and community recognitions this evening.
Okay, thank you. At this time, the board may consider and discuss comments and concerns from the public. Those wishing to address the governing board on items not on tonight's agenda may do so at this time. Speakers are requested to hold their comments to 3 minutes. In accordance with Arizona law, board members may not respond, comment, or ask questions of speakers regarding issues not on the agenda. And tonight we just have one request to address, and that's from Mr. Mark Tate.
Good evening, President Anderson, Superintendent Ruth, and governing board members. On Saturday, November 5th, the Vail Rotary Club held a recycle and shredding event in the land between the tracks. With limited advertising, they were able to collect over 4,000 pounds of paper and 4 gaylords of electronics to be recycled. It's always kind of fun to look through the gaylords and see, you know, the oldest item, the electronics that are going back to the fat monitors or the 286s. And so it's always kind of a museum, kind of a trip. This activity is a major fundraiser for the Vail Rotary, and a lot of that money then comes back to the Vail School District, either through grants to schools or through the backpack school back to school program. So it's a major fundraiser for the Rotary. Want to take a moment just to recognize 2 employees of the district who provided assistance for this event. Steve Lee, who's the tech repair supervisor, and Gene Holm, warehouse supervisor, both assisted with the event. So we really appreciate their time and effort on that Saturday morning, and they could have been home sleeping in. Also, there were 5 cadets from the school district NJROTC who helped unload the vehicles and then put the paper and electronics into the proper bins. So thank you to NJROTC and the students, Ella Johnson from Cienega, Max Johnson from Cienega, Corelli Jones, Andrada, Ariel Rodriguez, Formica Mountain, and Tyler Reed. And then a related thank you. I do tend to spend a lot of time in the land between the tracks. You know, there's the one building there with the two restrooms. One of the custodial folks, Hilda Canio, is responsible for those two restrooms. And those rooms are spotless. It's kind of interesting as people are in the property and say, hey, can I use the restroom? And I say, well, here, let me get the key and I'll lock it for you. You kind of get that look from the person's face like, oh, I've been to this truck stop before and I don't care to use that restroom. But then they use them, they come back and go, wow, that's cleaner than the one I have at home. So, and I really appreciate Hilda's attention and pride in keeping those restrooms clean. Thank you very much. Oh, and President Anderson and Mr. Aiken, thank you for your service. And I know what kind of a job it is. If you're looking to do some on Tuesday nights, I have an idea for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. I thought you were going to say, welcome to the alumni club.
He's got a job opening at the coffee shop.
I was gonna say, maybe I could get a job. Next is acknowledgement of public request to speak, and this is for anyone that wishes to address items on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone here that would like to address items on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to superintendent's report. Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Anderson, members of the board. Just want to, in case anyone was unaware, we had an election last Tuesday. And as of this Tuesday, we're still counting votes, but pictures are pretty clear across almost all races statewide. Pictures certainly clear here locally in regard to our governing board election. Pima County just posted their update a little bit ago, and there's about 5,400 votes that need to be counted countywide. So Vail would just receive a fraction of those if there are any left to count in the Vail area. So while the final results won't be certified probably for close to another week, the picture is clear. Jen Anderson and Ed Buster will be the next governing board members to replace Mr. Aiken and Mrs. Anderson in January. So just want to acknowledge that. And a six-way race, the current standings are Mrs. Anderson at 26%, Mr. Buster just under 25. The next closest person is just over 18%. So I just want to say to all six candidates, thank you for throwing your name into the hat and joining in the arena. It is easy to criticize. It is easy to provide opinion. It is much more difficult to step in the arena and take action. And all six of the candidates took the action of stepping forward and trying to win a very important seat on the Vail Governing Board. So to Mrs. Anderson, Mr. Buster, Mrs. Tzakis, Mr. Smith, Ms. Kleber, and Ms. Morris, I simply say thank you for doing that. And when the time of certification is known, we will do a broader communication about that. In the meantime, personally, thank you to all of them, and congratulations to Mrs. Anderson and Mr. Buster.
That's what you have, okay. Next item is the governing board reports. Governing board members may present reports at this time. Do any board members have a report to make?
Had the opportunity to have a fantastic lunch out at Andrada with Mr. Caruth and several of our Andrada staff. Great to be there where my daughter went to school and reconnect with some of her teachers and some new staff. And just chat about whatever came up. And we had some really good, tough conversations and informative conversations and a lot of fun conversations. So thank you to everybody who came.
Mr. King.
I got a long one, so I'm gonna have to share my screen too here in a minute, so.
Sure.
All right, so I'd like to start off tonight saying thank you to the Vail community for making it through another election cycle, so kind of parroting John here. Especially thank those community members who became candidates in the race to fill the seats being vacated by President Anderson and John Aiken. All right, the race is still yet to be concluded, but the ballots should be finished counted by Friday. As a representative of the public, the school board is one of the closest offices to the public that we can be elected to fill. Additionally, I'd like to thank Assistant Superintendent Kevin Carney and the wonderful staff of Amanda Hunt, 5th grade, Lori Diaz, advanced math, Laura, I'm gonna probably murder this name here, Ms. Yarowski, a parapro, and Jane Van Wyck from the copy room at Sunita Valley Elementary School for a different reality check lunch, kind of different, right? After our last board meeting. Thing that made this reality check lunch unique was there weren't any issues being brought up to discuss. It was more of just a conversation. We discussed families, backgrounds, our devotion to the district and the people here. There was a very unifying sentiment that Miss Katie Griffin is the best principal at Sunita Valley and the staff love her and can't say enough good things about her. So now I got to share pictures. Finish this part here. This is the best part. So this was something else cool I did. So I popped over here to the district office. Maybe. Popped over here to the district office a couple weeks ago and I ran into Sarah Caruth and she parroted a sentiment provided by Grant Knox that I ran into at a reality check lunch about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. And we were talking about this program called United Sound. And as I said, I'm probably gonna mess this whole thing up, but they invited me out to Cienega and we checked it out. I checked this out. So that day when I got out there, right, I got to watch Grant and Sarah and all the people invite 5 kids into the band. And as you saw here, this is actually part of this program. The kids are invited into the band. This is a special education program, right? And they bring these special education kids in and they've got their group kind of put together and they're teaching these kids to play music, not just a cacophony, but actual music. And they're actually working together with these kids. And it really is something just amazing to see. And as you see over here on the left and the right, these kids are working together. They're pairs, they're in teams, right? So as I said, I'm gonna totally mess this thing up. So, but they play some of them play specialized instruments that are chosen based on the size of the student, right? One of the students there plays a 3/4 size violin. This violin was actually provided because of a grant provided by the Vail School District Foundation to assist with instrument purchases. Some of the students you see there as well, right, are peer mentors. Peer mentors and staff work together to assist the special education students in learning their music. This idea, the peer mentors idea was actually one of Grant Knox's former students' ideas. So Sarah actually put it, kind of worked it together, developed it, hatched it. And if you don't know Sarah, she's currently working on her master's degree in special education. So earlier this year, peers were brought together, right, to give peer mentor training to assist them in working with their co-students, their peers, right, at Cienega. So as you see here on the bottom right, these young ladies here are working together on how to assemble a clarinet and actually working on how to basically work on various rhythms there. So this was the end of the class there. So you have the students that were adopted into the band or accepted into the band with their certificates, and then their peer mentors, and then Grant and the other instructors there in the back. So that right there was one of the best things that, we could actually do, is just go out and actually see what's actually going on in our classrooms. So I wanted to share that with all of you. And Sarah and Grant, if you're listening, the invitation is still open to come to a board meeting and get your students to play. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there more?
No, that was it. I'm done.
Okay. Okay, thank you for sharing that. Very nice. Ms. Pratt?
I just have a really quick one. I just also want to thank the school board candidates. I know it's a hard thing to throw your name in the hat, so I appreciate our community members stepping forward. I also want to congratulate Callie Tippett on her graduation next month from BYU, Idaho. It was definitely, from my perspective, watching you, it was a lesson on perseverance and dedication, and for you to model to your kids and all the students in Vail what education looks like and how important education is. So great job. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Any other board report? We shall continue on then. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. All items listed below are consent matters and will be considered by one motion at this time. There will be no discussion of consent items. Any board member may remove an item from the consent agenda by request. All items not accepted and approved as part of the consent agenda will be considered individually. Do any board members wish to pull an item? Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Anderson, members of the board. It's recommended that the Vail School District Governing Board approve all items on the consent agenda as presented.
I'll accept motion. Oh, who moved? Mr. Aiken? Or-
I will second then.
Okay, Ms.
Oh,
Pratt
either way.
moves and Mr. Aiken seconds. I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is old business. And the first item is EBC-RE Emergencies Regulation for Governing Board Policy EBC. Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Anderson, members of the board. This is an item that we studied last meeting. It was brought to our attention by Mr. King, and really, the board normally does not take action on regulation, it takes action on policy, but Mr. King noticed that there is a regulation available that tucks in under policy EBC, which that policy requires that we have procedures in place to address emergencies. And that policy has been in place for years in the Vail School District. And then the school district we are responsible for carrying out and ensuring that we have procedures in place. There are regulations that tuck in under that also can be a little more prescriptive about what those procedures look like. And in this instance, that's what policy, which regulation EBCRA is in regards to, and it is in specific regard to how we respond to the aftermath of a crisis involving generally a student or a staff member at a site. Several years ago, actually for many years, we've had some practices in place throughout our schools, but we didn't have a lot of coordination around those practices. About 3 years ago, we started to develop more of a coordination, and then 2 years ago, really wrote that process into our procedure manual, which is our crisis response plan that is now in place. So that is our procedure, and we continue to refine that. As you all are well aware, we've added significant additional resources to our counseling group, including a district lead counselor. One of their tasks was to standardize these procedures. and which we have done. And this regulation, adding this regulation, which is now in alignment with the procedures, will provide a through line from practice through policy on what the district's response will look like when faced in the aftermath of a crisis of a student or a staff member at a particular campus. We've used these practices, unfortunately, several times, most recently with a passing of a family member, of a staff member. So it is could be used for a wide variety of reasons, but we know now that what happens will be coordinated and consistent across all schools. So with that, I'll go ahead and make the recommendation that the Vail School District Governing Board approve EBCRE, the regulation for emergencies for Governing Board Policy EBC as presented.
I'll move.
A motion?
That was me.
Okay,
Second.
I don't know what's wrong with my hearing. Gee. Mr. Aiken moves and Mr. King seconds. Are there any questions or comments? Oh, yes, Mr. King.
All right, I actually wrote a kind of little blurb for this. I met Christina Winter last year and heard her heart-wrenching story of how her son Ethan chose to end his life. I invited Christina and her family to attend board meetings to tell her story so that we may never have to hear another one like it. Fast forward to earlier this year. I spent a lot of time going through the 233 school districts policies, which use the Arizona School Board Association Policy Bridge, seeing what school districts have policies and regulations in place, which reached out to relatives and parents in the event of a suicide or death within the district. I found that 23 of them did. You would think this is great. Unfortunately, that's less than 10% of the school districts in Arizona which utilize the policy bridge system. Tonight, if we approve policy EBC-RE, we will take the state over 10% and become one of the districts taking a proactive stance on this critical issue. I want to thank Christine and her family, Byron and Boo and her friend, for helping her making it through this difficult time. I want to thank the Vail community for reaching out to her and her family for being there in their time of need and truly exemplifying what it means when we say where education is a community effort. That community is all of us. And as that community, we pull together in good times and the bad. Lastly, I want to thank Heather Stow and Amanda Cook for all of the hard work they put in to help bring this policy to fruition. Their hard work and diligence will ensure people and resources we have assembled are ready, willing, and able to respond to a crisis today, tomorrow, or in the future. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions? Thank you, Mr. King, for your hard work in bringing this to the board to establish as a policy. It's been a practice, but a policy it's good work. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Next item on the agenda is.
We have to vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is new business, and the first item is CCSG Workforce Grant Distributions. Mr. Crew.
Thank you, President Anderson, members of the board. Our community programs group, as you know, it functions under the umbrella of the Vail School District, but really is its own business entity that provides childcare to one of their core functions is providing childcare and preschool care to our community. They have been a part of the Child Care Stabilization Grant since its inception as part of the Recovery Act. The first round of that funding was about $2.1 million that we received. Mrs. Kubiak and her staff used those dollars to do significant upgrades to programs, purchase equipment and materials, and those kinds of things. And we were able to use some of those funds to provide stipends to staff for retention purposes in conjunction with what we did last year for the rest of the school district staff who aren't part of community services. I think it's safe to say that this year, it was a little bit of a surprise that there was a second round of that funding targeted at workforce for childcare development. Our community service program received just over $1.4 million. All of those dollars need to be spent at the workforce, so they have to be used specifically for people working in that program in the childcare capacity. And we have about 100 staff members that are eligible to receive those funds. We cannot use that money for other programming needs or purchasing equipment and those kinds of things. It has to be targeted at workforce. So this is a plan that lays out what that looks like. And with that, I'll ask Mrs. Kubiak to kind of round out what that plan looks like. These funds became available. We became aware of these funds in July of this year, and they need to be spent by the end of September of 23.
Thank you.
President Anderson, Superintendent Caruth, and governing board members. Mr. Caruth did a wonderful job of summarizing these funds, and it was quite a surprise for us when we received a notification that we were getting a second round of funds. As you can see in the background, we have delegated or put money in certain areas. Being part of a school district, we are somewhat limited to how we can use these funds with our staff. So, but we have found some creative ways to be able to support our staff. Some of those being that childcare, if they have children in our programs while they're working, we can offset with these costs for their funds, so their childcare will be free. We can use recruitment supplies, professional development bonuses. We can support college classes or reimburse for college classes or renewal of their CDAs. We're looking at doing an hourly differential for substitutes if they are willing to work their time at one site and maybe sub at another site if we're short a staff member. And then also covering fingerprint clearance card cost. We are also looking at doing those quarterly retention bonuses. We really are trying to let staff know the importance of their positions and what they do, and that we do appreciate them. And this is one way that we're hoping to retain staff in our department.
So this is a study item. There's the framework is Mrs. Kubiak laid out is what we're asking. We'll be bringing forward to ask for approval at the next board meeting. So happy to answer any questions.
I forgot when you and I spoke, Mr. Kruth, about this, that my employer actually does one other thing that I just spaced my mind when we were talking about. We contribute to 401ks, which is not applicable here, but I don't know if you can make contributions to ASRS. For do the childcare employees participate in ASRS? So that's the other thing my employer does with the money. They deposit money into a 401k.
So the dollar amounts on here that we have is including those contributions.
Oh, we're doing
The district will not be covering any of that. That is all being covered through these funds.
Cool.
Any other comments or questions?
Well, I'm grateful for the opportunity to have access to these funds, and looks like you're working really hard to distribute in a way in conjunction with the directions of the funds, and our staff will significantly benefit. So thanks for working on that process.
Anything else? I think this is great. Very happy about it. Thank
Yeah,
you.
too. Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is updated certified technology support specialist job description. Mr. Kruth.
Thank you, President Anderson, members of the board. This is technically a cleanup as Mr. Breen is going through and continuing to do that work with his staff and bringing things up to current standards. Mr. Breen.
Yeah, thank you, President Anderson, Mr. Caruth, members of the governing board. As Mr. Caruth stated, we are going through this job description and just cleaning it up. When we look back at the original one, it was actually from 2006. So Let's flash back into a year after Empire High School opened, and we hired our first repair technician, Steve Lee, to help with all those laptops, who's now our repair team supervisor. So we decided, since it's been over 16 years, let's look at this job description. And also, functionally, some things have changed a little bit as we've worked hard to increase our refresh cycle on devices. We're doing less and less of the Frankensteining all the different parts together to make things work for a really long time. But so that refresh cycle, and where we're at with just Chromebooks and things like that, the job has also changed a little bit. And so one of the things in terms of what we added to the job description is in addition to their repair tech duties, they're also going to be helping out with just more general tech support needs across here at the district office, and then also helping out across the site. So really taking their talents and expanding beyond what they're doing now, and using some of their time for just general technology support. So other than that, nothing is really changing with the position. The level is, and all those things are staying the same. We just really cleaned it up and updated things, but we're bringing it to you tonight as a study item with the intention to bring it back at the next meeting. If you have any questions.
Mr. Aiken?
Thank you, Mr. Breen. I have a question. Has there ever been, I don't know why I didn't think of this until now, but like, will there ever be a need to have a site tech? And I don't mean the STC, but I mean like a repair tech based at multiple sites, because we're so big and we have such a large repair need. Do you know, like, am I asking a good question? Or would the STC ever be also dual certified in repairing machines as well? That kind of thing. Sorry,
Mr. Reed?
that was a terrible question,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean.
President Anderson, yeah, Mr. Aiken, I think I'm putting the pieces together, what you're picking up, what you're dropping off there. Yeah, actually, I don't really see necessarily a need for more repair. Kind of what we've seen over the last couple of years is maybe a little less on the actual repair side. And so, and again, part of that is because we're trying to be better about our refresh cycles and just the way devices are made now, especially with the Chromebooks. So we're seeing a little bit less than that. So I don't anticipate that need. And what we're doing is sort of looking at their day and say, how can we have them support where some of these other needs are outside of the repair realm.
Cool.
Any other comments or questions? Well, thank you for keeping up the house there.
Thank you all.
Next item on the agenda is transportation zones. Mr. Cruz?
Thank you, President Anderson, members of the board. This is one of the items under the topic of programming for our current enrollment conditions, but specific to that is transportation zones, and Mr. Carney is taking the lead on this. Mr. Carney.
President Anderson, Mr. Cruz, members of the board, just want to take some time this evening as a study item to talk about transportation zones. I'm going to start off with just reviewing the origin of transportation zones and the original intent or the goals behind them. I want to talk to what our current practices are with transportation zones and the results we've been getting with those practices. We recently brought a committee together to take a look at the transportation zones to see if any revisions need to be made, and then wanted to share with you what those recommendations from the committee are. Get your feedback and then come back to future board meeting with the recommendation for potential approval. So with that in mind, in terms of the origin, high school choice has been a longstanding tradition. Vail, as you know, we value giving parents and students that option to choose which high school is the best fit for their needs. And that's just a very unique approach to high school, because in many school districts, not only here in Arizona, but across the country, students don't have a choice in their high school. They are bound by the boundaries of which the closest school to which they reside. Now, providing choice is a terrific thing in that it can provide a great fit potentially for kids and parents, but it also creates inefficiencies in terms of resources, staffing, planning, and cost. And so as we got ready to open up Micah Mountain several years ago, administration and governing board took a look to say, can we continue to allow for high school choice, provide high school choice, but yet still provide transportation? It would be cost effective to do so. And so you approved the use of transportation zones with two goals in mind. One, preserve that high school choice while providing transportation in a fiscally responsible way. a fiscally responsible way. So here's how it currently works. If you're accepted into a high school, being the biggest caveat, if you're accepted into Andrada, Empire, Pantano, or Vale Academy, we will provide transportation to those schools for you. A little bit of difference though with Cienega and Mike Mountain, because they're two of our largest comprehensive high schools. If you live in the Cienega transportation zone and you get accepted into Micah Mountain, we will not provide you transportation there. Then the opposite is true, which is if you live in the Micah Mountain transportation zone, but you get accepted into Cienega, we won't provide transportation to you for that school. There's also something to be aware of called the flex zone, which is the Rita Ranch area. If you live in that school and any school that you get accepted into, we will provide transportation to you, for you to that school. But with the caveat for all three of those options, that if you live within a 1.5 mile radius, we won't provide transportation for you as a student unless it's an unsafe situation. There's not a walking path or there are other hazards potentially there for students. So the results of putting transportation zones in almost 3 years ago on the high school, preserve high school choice side, prior to transportation zones being implemented, 93% of our students were able to get into the first school that they chose in the high school choice process. Since transportation zones have been implemented, we've still been able to largely preserve that first choice of high schools, with 87% of the students being able to receive their first choice. But both pre and post transportation zone implementation, 100% of students have either gotten their first or second choice. So we feel like we've been able to successfully meet that goal, preserving high school choice. On the second part of the ledger there, the idea that we want to do this in a fiscally responsible way. If we had not gone to transportation zones, we would need an additional 5 bus routes to Micah Mountain High School. Now, with that, that's an annual cost for each route of about approximately $55,000, which includes the cost for a driver. It also includes the maintenance for buses and also mileage and fuel costs as well. The other concern would have been that in a time of driver shortage, we would have been able to even fill those positions that might have been necessary. All told, this saved us about $275,000 annually. We extrapolate that out over about a 10-year period, we're saving approximately $3 million by going to transportation zones. So we still though brought a committee together to study this idea of transportation zones. The reason being, because they had been in place for a few years, it's something that nobody had ever done. There was no blueprint for this. And so we wanted to find out from those in the community what was working, what wasn't working, what the concerns were. So we created a committee of approximately 25 people. This involved parents from each of our middle schools and high schools. It involved administration from both Cienega and Micah Mountain High School. We also had 2 board members on there, Mr. King and Mrs. Pratt. And then we also had representatives from the transportation department and myself and Mr. Ethan Hurley. We met over the course of several evenings over 2 months. And our charge was simply to look at the current practices of transportation zones and decide if any revisions need to be made to those to the current practices. And during that meeting time, we spent some time talking about what were the things they saw as pros for transportation zones, what were their concerns. And then we asked them, what are areas that if we were to make changes that you would like us to look at in terms of our entire district? And there were 5 options they asked us to explore. What would be the impact if we moved the area called what we call the New Rocking K to Cienega High School from its current transportation zone of Micah Mountain High School? Also, they asked us to look at the Wilmot 910 corridor, both north and south. Currently, those students go to Micah Mountain High School. What would that look like if we were to change that zone to Cienega's zone? We also looked at the area of I-10 south of Cole, switching that from Micah Mountain to Cienega. And then also we studied that flex zone there in the heart of Rita Ranch. And we took a look at what would happen if we were to split Rita Ranch in half and have those on the northern side of Rita go to Micah Mountain, be a that zone. Those on the southern side end up in the Cienega zone. And the last option we looked at was just what if we just left things as currently we have them. The recommendations that the group has brought forward to you for feedback on is 1, they're recommending moving that New Rocking Cave to Cienega from Micah Mountain for several reasons. One reason being that that particular area currently only has 15 high school students who are there. And of those 15, not all are bus riders. And so if we are to make some changes in that area, it's going to cause the least amount of disruption. The other reason we want to take a look at that area is we know that area is going to grow significantly. There's going to be thousands of homes in there, and in the future, a large number of students that will need to be attending the high schools. That being said, we also know along the Houghton corridor, there's still a lot of development that's going to occur there. And so because of the fact that we have this development occurring down the Houghton corridor, also we have this development occurring up there in Rocky Cay, we thought it were prudent to start planning to say, hey, we don't want to overcrowd Micah Mountain and Empire potentially. So let's look at having those kids from Rocky Cay go to Cienega rather than Micah Mountain. In addition to that, there's a flood zone out in that area. And so if kids were to continue to go from Micah Mountain during our monsoon season, when we have quite a bit of flooding, that would cause rerouting and delays in transportation, also potential safety issues, not only our buses, but student drivers. And so we're also recommending that area be changed to Cienega as a result of that. The second recommendation from the committee was to just create clear language for those in the community on their actual chances of getting into Micah Mountain. Micah Mountain has proven to be a very popular school of choice, as it's our newest school. They're doing a terrific job. And so some parents felt like there just need to be much more clear language there about, hey, if you apply for Micah Mountain in certain zones, know your chances of getting in are slim. And so you really want to think about what your first choice is for high school. And then the third recommendation is to further study Wilmot and the I-10 area, possibly moving that not for the upcoming year, but into the future as we look at a potential recession coming, as we look at continued growth around the district. There are also a large number of families that live out in that area, so that would cause quite a bit of change to families in terms of having to potentially grandfather, meaning providing additional busing for 1 year for those students that might have to change schools. And so the committee said, rather than making that move now, let's just take a closer look at that and see if that's a future recommendation we might want to bring together for you. So those are the recommendations that the committee has come up with. Wanted to bring these before you and get feedback from you, as I mentioned earlier, and then come back at a future board meeting with the final recommendation. Other questions you have?
Are there any questions or comments? Oh, Ms. Pratt.
I just want to say thank you to Mr. Kearney. It was such a huge task with a lot of moving parts. So I just want to say thank you for studying this and spending so much time on it.
I think this was an appropriate opportunity to take another snapshot and look, and also another opportunity for the community to come in and tell us how they are feeling about how this is working for them. So I think it was really mindful. Appreciate it.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you for heading up this committee and the study. It appears to me that from our study session earlier this evening that a lot of thought and time and commitment went into coming up with these recommendations. And I think that they are good, thoughtful recommendations. And I am very glad that the community was so involved in helping develop the recommendations. So thank you.
Thank you, President.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is Elementary Spanish Language Immersion Program. Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Anderson and members of the board. Also, another item that's really intended to address our current enrollment conditions, which have a higher number of students who are enrolled by grade level at the high school level, and it tapers off down to the elementary level. And so how are we balancing enrollment and what that looks like overall? So we've been expanding on our popular language immersion programs, looking at targeting perhaps Spanish language immersion at Cottonwood Elementary. And with that, I'll have Mrs. Penn provide the background.
Good evening, Mrs. Anderson, President Anderson, Mr. Craig, members of the board. We have been kind of exploring the idea, as Mr. Creek has mentioned, of providing a Spanish immersion program to our Vail community at Cottonwood Elementary School. As we have been exploring this, we've wanted to make sure that it is a good fit for the Cottonwood staff and families, and that it is a good fit for Vail and is something that has significant interest and would draw families to Cottonwood for this opportunity. The steps that we have taken so far is that we have visited with Miss Diane Vargo at Mesquite Elementary School and really had an opportunity to hear her learning from implementing the Chinese immersion program and building that program over the course of many years. She was a wealth of information on what it takes to implement an immersion program, a language immersion program within the academic structures and the way that we do education here in the Vail School District. Ms. Bates then took a small team from Cottonwood and visited Queen Creek. This is one of our BT partners. Excuse me, it was Cave Creek, not Queen Creek. Cave Creek, BT partner, and they also have a Chinese immersion and a Spanish immersion program at their site. We visited their school system when we were first implementing the Chinese immersion program, and they've been doing this for a long time, so we're able to hear their perspective as well. One of the things that we've been looking into is just exactly who we are thinking would be the market for this particular program at Cottonwood. And what we are really looking at are families who would like to have the opportunity for their children to learn a second language, Spanish, as an immersion experience. This doesn't mean that other families would be excluded from the opportunity, but it means that each child that demonstrates interest would be looked at for what their educational goals are, and making sure that we have those prioritized as we're looking at how students are provided opportunities in this program. The next steps that would be in place is that Ms. Bates would like to pull together a committee of parents and staff members and stakeholders and expand those that are participating in the development of this program. Those that she has talked to already have shown a very, very strong interest in developing the program and are anxious to have the opportunity for their own children if we do go forward. So that's kind of where we are right now in the exploring stage, and looking forward to the opportunity to continue to move down the path of making this program happen.
Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions or comments? Well, I just think this is just a great opportunity for so many different reasons, and I'm just thrilled about it. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it all plays out.
Just in the world of school choice, having this kind of choice available to our parents, I think is spectacular. I wish I had this choice.
It's great.
I appreciate it.
Maybe just one really quick comment. I know I've said a couple times I'm super excited about this, and I am. Exactly what Ms. Tippett said, just that school choice piece to it. The only thing that I would love to just express at this point, I know you said you're going to start it out with kinder and first and then add 1 grade per year. I would love to, well, maybe it doesn't, I don't know. I was going to say, I'd love to explore the possibility of expanding it quicker so that more kids can have the possibility, but maybe maybe you have to start with that cohort that learned it together in kindergarten and first, but I also think kids learn things really quick. So anyways, just throwing that out there just to say I would support it if things are going well, just to get out there quicker so that a lot more kids can participate.
I'd agree with that. I agree with that.
So the sooner the better is what I'm taking away.
The sooner the better, and Logan is in 6th grade. I'm just kidding, but really I'm serious on the quicker the better, just for all kids. I know my Logan's not gonna get it, but.
Thank you. I'm hanging around because.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
In case you're wondering why I'm just not going to sit around.
Oh, you look lovely up there. Next item on the agenda is character education 60-day public view. Mr. Cruz.
Just pen.
President Anderson, Mr. Cruz, members of the board. The practice that we have in Vail is when we're bringing a resource for to be asked to be put on public display for the 60 days is that typically goes on our consent agenda. But with our character education, we have been bringing it off of the consent and just talking very openly about that to make sure that that transparency is provided. Earlier this year, we put on public review several character education programs. One of them was Character Strong. That went, all of these programs went through the process and they were adopted. Character Strong enjoyed a great deal of public support in the comments. At the time that we brought it, it was for grades 6 through high school. There was an elementary section for Character Strong, but it was under review and being revised. And so we did not bring it at that time. The elementary section is called Character Strong, Purposeful People. That revision has taken place. And just as with the other curriculum for character education, we went through a very extensive vetting process where we sat down and looked at all of the lessons and all of the videos and made sure that they were in alignment with the board adopted common values that our character education committee that worked on the common values brought forward earlier. This particular program for elementary school does align just very well with those character traits, those common values, just as the middle school and elementary school section aligns. We had one lesson that we were just not super thrilled with. Not that it didn't align, but just it wasn't really it didn't feel very Vail, if that's kind of a thing, which we all know it is. But so we were going to bring it forward with the exception of that one lesson. What we also did was contacted the publisher, the creator, and they took that, they took our feedback to their curriculum department, who actually pulled that particular lesson completely out of the curriculum and replaced it with something that that meets our needs and our expectations. So we were really thrilled that we can bring that to you in its entirety, asking for that public review process. And we were also just really thrilled that the response from this company was to listen, to take our feedback into consideration, to act on it, and to provide us with something that meets our needs even more closely. So with that, this is an action item, and it's the administration's recommendation that the Vail School District Governing Board approve for public display the Character Strong, Purposeful People character education curriculum.
I'll accept the motion.
So moved.
Mr. King moves.
I'll second.
Ms. Pratt seconds. Are there any questions or comments? Oh, Mr. King.
So, Ms. Penna, are we gonna be getting the access to this as well, so we can go through and conduct the same review? Or is it under the same login credentials that we had before when we were doing the 6 through 12 review?
President Anderson, Mr. Kruth, members of the board, we have a letter ready to go that has the information for parents on that. It will be posted on the website once action is taken. And for the governing board, if I actually would have to check with Ms. Stow on exactly how that's set up, but I can guarantee you that we can get you the same level of access that we provided for the first round.
Thank you so much for the in-depth analysis that you all have done on all these programs. And I look forward to hearing how this one is received as well. And appreciate the transparency that is provided to the community with this particular program. Thank you. We have to vote on that. So all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Well, I was just looking at the next item agenda, which sounds so intriguing. Which is RFP 23-009-27 Weed and Pest Control Services. Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, Mrs. Anderson. Members of the board, we're just trying to keep everybody on their toes, moving from, transportation zones and Spanish immersion, character education to weed and pest control. So, this is standard part of doing business, and, it's the time, of the cycle that we need to re-up our, weed and pest control service throughout the district. The conclusion of that contract is upon us. So a standard request for proposals was issued. We had 3 respondents, 3 organizations responded to that proposal. In combination, as we follow all of our procurement processes, pull together a committee, review those proposals. That committee has made a recommendation, and that recommendation is for a 1-year term beginning on December 1st of this year, with the option to renew annually for up to 4 consecutive years after. I'll go ahead and make the recommendation, and then if there's any questions, I will try and answer them. If I can't answer them, Mr. Wood is here to give me a backup. So it's recommended that the Vail School District Governing Board award RFP 23-009-27 for weed and pest control services to the vendor Wildcat Exterminating as presented.
I'll accept a motion.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay, Ms. Pratt moves and Ms. Tippett seconds. Are there any questions or comments?
I'm expecting vociferous debate on this.
John, it's your second to last meeting. Would we expect nothing less?
Oh, just wait.
Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is RFP 23-010-27 Waste and Recycle Services for the Vail School District sites located outside the city of Tucson services area. Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Anderson and members of the board. Similar to the weed and pest control, this is another just standard process in the cycle, but this one has a unique twist, and it's a creative twist that Mr. Wood and team thought of. So I thought I'd let him explain that and then make the recommendation for the RFP. Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz, President Anderson, members of the board. Actually, a little over 5 years ago, this was the very first agenda item that I got to present to you all in my new role as Director of Facilities. So here I am 5 years later to bring it back.
Garbage.
All trash. And actually 5 years ago, we awarded this to what was called Big Red at that time. And Republic Services bought them out within that contract. So we went back with Republic Services for the last 5 years. And we've been having some issues. There's not a whole lot of waste and recycling companies out there to begin with. And Republic is facing the same issues that all of us are facing with labor shortage and having people available to come and pick up trash from our schools and recycling from our schools, as well as between the tracks and all of our facilities in the school district. So as a team, we started brainstorming some ideas on how, because it is frustrating when you have overfilling, your garbage cans are overflowing at the school sites, and now our people are going to put them in back of pickup trucks into the dump and all those wonderful things, instead of the company we're paying to do that. So we were brainstorming some different ideas, and we thought about talking to the city of Tucson about helping us out with our schools that are within city limits. And those discussions have been going on for a few months, and we're almost there with the city. When you're dealing with the city, we have to have the IGA in place to be able to use them for those services, and then they have to go to the city council to get approval to expand their area to our schools. So tonight, we're talking about all of our schools with Republic, but only on a month-to-month basis until we get the IGA in place, that we can come to you for approval for the city of Tucson to take over our city schools, and for Republic Services to take care of the schools that are within the county. So with all of that background, I'll just read the recommended action. That the Vail School District Governing Board award RFP 23-010-27 for waste and recycling services to the vendor Republic Services as presented.
I will accept a motion.
So moved.
Mr. King moves.
I'll second.
Ms. Tippett seconds. Are there any questions or comments? Are there any questions or comments? Okay, then I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Thank you. Oh, next item on the agenda is executive session.
I move we go into executive session.
Okay.
Second.
Mr. Aiken moves and Mr. King seconds. I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing, the motion carries.
Take a break between,
We
we'll meet in my